Welcome in, my friends. It's time again for the Cannabiz Conversations podcast, season 5, brought to you by our friends at Hephaestus House of Automation. Look, if you're looking to make 2,000 joints in an hour, which is a lot, not one person can do it. However, one operator on the Aura X machine with Hephaestus House of Automation, you can get that done. So if something you need is to have 2,000 joints an hour, well, then you need to go to HEFESTUS-tech.com to learn more. Thank you so much, Hephaestus House of Automation. We could not have done it without you. All right, today's guest is a fun one for me because I think he's in a very challenging spot in what he's trying to accomplish, but he's been doing it, and I'm really excited to get going here. Matt Schifrin, how you doing today, man?
Great, Sean. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. We appreciate you making the time. So we'll get into all of the business dealings here, and we like to come on here and tell the stories of founders. That's exciting. However, the story starts with, where did Matt first run into this beautiful plant, whether it be business or consumption? Matt, tell us that story, man.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. I bet my first time getting involved in cannabis was definitely in high school, just like most people. Never dealt, I wasn't anybody's plug necessarily, but, and it's funny because I probably never paid for weed until college. At which point then, definitely flower consumption increased for sure. Probably tapered off for a little while, but then I think in terms of like how we ended up getting into the industry, twofold. One, I think it was the cross section or intersection, if you will, between both my wife and I's experiences. For myself, I was in healthcare for a while, consumer medical devices. I then was in spirits, specifically bourbon for, a good 5-6 years, and felt that cannabis was really that intersection between healthcare and sort of recreational consumption. And especially with a growth category and success, having built authentic brands for a really long time, definitely believed that cannabis was a great business opportunity. But on the flip side, I had a brother that died of a heroin overdose when I was 8 years old. And so, and then my wife, we both have an appeal for mental health and mental wellness. And so, we just believe that cannabis is such a better product to ultimately help more people faster. So, when we saw the opportunity to get into the space, we knew that we wanted to do it for both business reasons as well as personal reasons.
So Matt, let's go back if you're comfortable with it. And obviously you're an adult and you've dealt with a lot that's come your way since obviously the age of 8, losing a sibling. Most times when we hear those stories, it goes one way or the other, right? Where people go and they go kind of diving into the depths of the darkness, or in some cases, they go find the light. For you, what was that like, man? I mean, when did you really start to kind of deal with that and realize what effect that would have on your life and how you would interact with drugs or alcohol as you got older, if you don't mind?
No, it's an awesome question, and one that nobody has asked me in a really long time. Very early on, like I've never tried cocaine before in my entire life, right? And plenty of our peers have, and I think like certainly have dabbled in psilocybin and possibly some other euphoric types of substances, right? But I always had a very hard line of nothing too addictive, because my fear was that the more you play with super addictive substances, the more likely you are to put yourself in trouble, right? And I think I have this firm belief and philosophy of balance, right? Do anything you want, do it in moderation. Try anything once, but ultimately don't spend your entire life on a ski mountain. Don't spend it all in an office. Find that balance between things. And so that, I think, holistically has been my approach towards I think narcotics, alcohol, even business for that matter.
A man after my own heart. I say it every day to people. I'm an addict of all of them.
Yeah.
You name it, I'm an addict of it. I love the excess of life. I love all of them, gambling, all of it. I come from a long line of Irish Catholic alcoholics. I get how the whole thing works. But the key to life, and I've been through rehab. I've used cocaine, and that's how I end up in rehab. Thank you very much, cocaine. And I realized that really wasn't how me, Sean, was going to get through this whole thing of my life and what I was going to do. And I immediately realized, this had to have been probably 16 years old, I realized moderation was going to be the only thing that would save my life. From every drug. And yeah, you're right. I say to everyone, try everything once, get into it, see what it does. Maybe not the best advice, but it's the advice I use. And so you're absolutely right that moderation is the key. Now, I think you'll probably agree as entrepreneurs, and you're in a husband-wife duo like I am, it's not that easy. Moderation comes, I have a lot easier time moderating my drug use than I do my work life. Do you feel something similar, Matt?
Oh, 100%. I mean, look, first, I was just going to add that I think that, there's an expression that all men die, but very few men have lived, right? And they, them, whatever your personal pronouns are, I think it's relevant. And look, I have 2 kids, I have 2 boys, and so I think a lot about, how are we going to deal with drugs and alcohol, especially because it's a totally different world out there today, right? My wife's cousin, who I feel like is my own cousin, his partner died of a fentanyl overdose because he was hit a bump when he was trying to study for something, right? And so the sort of nature of drugs and alcohol in the world is a much different place than I think it was when you were growing up or when I was growing up or even prior to that. Yeah. And so you got to have, I think, like a sensible approach to this overall. But yeah, I mean, in terms of business and moderation, it's bullshit, right? I mean, it really is. At the end of the day, we kill ourselves, and frankly, I've killed myself every day in my career, and I do so at sacrifice to friends, family, relationships, personal health, whatever that might be. But that's a personal decision. And I think I don't do it for the money, right? At the end of the day, I do it because I'm wildly passionate about building something at the end of the day. So yeah.
I mean, look, I agree with you. I deem myself a capitalist hippie. So, I mean, obviously I get money makes the world go round, but in the same turn, what I've learned a lot recently from my wife is that I need to find that balance. I've been running my organization for 13 years, and it's something that I never even envisioned a day where I would even take a step back. You know what I mean? Not even in the slightest way. And now here I am coming up on, like my 45th birthday. And I think to myself, all right, let's find a way to apply the deals of moderation that we say is good for all the rest of our life, but we can't yet find the work part. We have to find that. So I'm working on that. I want to circle back to something though. Now you're in Colorado. This is correct, Matt?
Yeah, that's correct.
Right. So you are raising 2 boys in Colorado, which is a completely legal state. Psilocybin, cannabis, like the party is running. I am not a parent. So I ask you, how will you, or what have you and your wife discussed about not only the mom and dad's business, but what's the approach to legal substances, right? I remember how my parents talked to me about alcohol because it was totally legal. It was completely different than the way they talked to me about cannabis, in the 1990s. But now you're in the state of both. What does it look and sound like to you, man?
Well, first off, I mean, my oldest is 5 and my youngest is 2.5. So the 2.5-year-old, we're not there yet, obviously. But with my 5-year-old, and even 5, we're probably a ways off still. Yeah, but still, even with my 5-year-old, right? Like he was reading something that I had like written down, and it was it said 2G. And he was like, "What's the 2G?" And it was sitting right there. And I was like, "This is our 2 gram, right? This is our 2G product." And so, I think the approach that inevitably we will take is first off, with our kids, we're farmers, right? We're farmers, we're retailers, we're manufacturers, we're wholesalers. And regardless, I think often of whatever industry you're in, it's the same. Business is the same, regardless of whatever widget you're producing at the end of the day. Full force, I'm a farmer, right? Like I deal with the same issues that large scale farmers in soy or cotton or corn are dealing with. And we deal with it at a microcosm, but it's the same problems, right? It's a commodity business, and you deal with pests and all other, crazy aspects of the business and scale and competition and, capital and no capital and so forth. And I think just the last thing in terms of answering your question of like how to approach it with the kids, one, it's honesty, right? It's being forthcoming. Like I think a lot of people wouldn't necessarily show, a 2 gram vaporizer of live resin to their 5-year-old. I think we're gonna take the approach of education, right? And not necessarily being hiding any of this aspect, but being forthcoming about it, and then establishing boundaries, right? Like, there's certain things that we will introduce them to. There's certain things that, they'll have to introduce themselves to. But at the end of the day, if we establish the right the right information, knowledge, and then confidence to be able to, make their own decisions, I think they'll be good. That's at least our hope.
Sounds like a good way to approach it. I love the fact that we move in honesty through that. It all makes a lot of sense. Now, with being the CEO of Pioneer Interest, which is obviously a vertical integration brand in Colorado, talk to me about, because I said this to you in the pre-show, I think it's a hard model. I think vertical integration, and I say it because I'm an automotive kid. So I grew up in the car business. My life and money is made in the car business. And in vertical integration, there is about tech stack and product and how companies believe that they can be the ultimate marketer, the ultimate social company, the ultimate this and that all in one place. I've been in this industry 25 years, automotive. Every single one of them is an abject failure. Every single one of them, because it's all about taking and bolting on, right? Making like the Franken tech, where it's you buy one company, you think it's going to integrate, it doesn't. You force feed it. I think it's a little different for you because I think you may have started with the concept of vertical integration. So for that to build is easier. Talk to me about what that first mindset was like going down that road.
Yeah, well, I think first, for your listeners, I'll just give like a quick overview of the business to explain. So, Pioneer Interest, we own two major brands. One is Natty Rems, that's our wholesale business. So in Colorado, we're one of the top 3 wholesale brands in the state. At any particular time, we're number 1 for flower, number 1 for pre-rolls, number 1 for live resin. And in this market, though, the 1, 2, 3 spot, it's a dogfight, right? Like any given day of the week, one of us is on top, one of us is number 2, and so forth. So from seed to sale, from cultivation, extraction, both solvent-based extraction with BHO or butane gas to solventless, so rosin specifically, we manufacture and produce a lot of goods. And then we sell those goods not only to our own retail chain, Lova, which Lova is really a retail concept that's meant to appeal to both legacy and third wave consumers, right? So, whether you're looking for the best quality products, the best price, or you're looking for a phenomenal retail experience with the most knowledgeable bud tenders, Lova's got you covered, right? So we not only sell Natty Rems products throughout our own retail stores, right? And in a true vertical sense, but we also sell our wholesale products to over 400 retailers throughout the state of Colorado, right? So that's what it means, at least for us, to be vertically integrated. And I think, Sean, you're absolutely right, especially in like the automotive industry, why like Lexus, for example, and I don't drive a Lexus, but why they can't just buy somebody's infotainment system and put it in there just is beyond me, right? So I think so many of these companies that are trying to like smash together things that they're not good at, and in vertically integrated cannabis, it's exactly the same thing, right? You have, for our business especially, we have to be the best in cultivation. We have to be the best in extraction, not just in butane-based, but solventless-based extraction. We have to be the best in sales, and then we have to be the best in retail. And each one of those, essentially, it's 3 different businesses all together, right? And so, every MBA in the world, people who've gotten their MBA degrees will tell you, like, just be great at one thing, right? We're trying to be great at 3 things. And to be honest, it almost killed us, man. It really did. Like, we almost failed multiple times on our way to success. And especially, I think Colorado, arguably, and many would probably take a counter position, but I believe that Colorado is the most competitive market in the United States, right? So to succeed here, I think says a lot.
I would agree with you, having, cut my teeth in the cannabis scene in Colorado, early 2000s, and seeing kind of what came of that. Before adult retail, it was actually pretty easy to move throughout the state and do stuff. We all had websites. We all used Chase Bank. We all went about our lives. We wholesaled to each other. There was really no really major headaches as besides cops and, rolling down grows and things of that nature. But from the business to business standpoint, dude, I rolled in with a suitcase to my buddy's place of all the flower we had grown. Hey, what are you interested in? Blah, blah, blah. Let's crack a jar. Let's taste it, whatever, and going through all that. And so I think to you guys, and I think how crazy it is, to have this seed to stale scan system, right? This like oversight and sort of what I consider overreach. Now, I get that in order for us to have nice things, we have to have a bunch of rules around it. So I'm like moderately okay. But when you start to look at adult use, and yes, I believe you are in the most competitive market because how much, again, there's no one who did it faster. There's no one who did it sooner, right? So that to me tracks. But I was just there on my visit. It was a couple months ago, I guess. And so we rolled into some dispensaries or whatever, because we're from out of town and prohibition states. So you got to get where you can.
Yeah.
And the experience is still the best of any state that I've entered into, because we're still cracking jars. We're still talking about, we have bud tender, we have conversation, like I go into Illinois, it sucks. I hate it. I don't even want to buy cannabis there anymore, because it's an automated system where I got buddies who got brands. That's it. You know what I mean? So I don't like when I show up to a flower thing and I'm like, God, everyone wants to lead with sale prices, Matt. And I don't give a shit, dude. I'm in the quality business. I would consider myself like top shelf kind of guy. Yeah. And now I'm like, well, wait, what do I know? What do I trust? I got no one to talk to. Totally. Then I go to Michigan and they give me this like little hole, that I can crack on this flower jar, or they open a bag for me and I have to quickly, reseal it. When you started off, when you guys looked at this vertical integration, what part appealed to you? I'm sure a lot of it scared you, but what part did you think, yeah, but if we do it and we do it right, this is where we'll win?
Oh, straight up. I did not want to touch extraction and concentrates with a 30-foot pole, because honestly, I just didn't understand it, right? Like
it's science shit, bro. It's science.
Dude, I never dabbed. I didn't really to start explaining to me. And by the way, I was just coming from spirits where, I understand distillation, I understand, bourbon and all of these things, but to try to understand, concentrates was just crazy. But we knew that we wanted to get into cultivation, because actually my wife's godbrother at the time became one of our business partners, and he had his own grow and was doing a phenomenal job. He was one of the co-founders of 3-Light, which is, a yield-based methodology that was very successful for achieving yield, but not as much on the quality side. So like solid mids for sure. But then we knew that retail was really our game, right? We knew that at the time, you'd walk into a store and it'd be just, so loud, like it'd be, like screamo music, bud tender wearing a hoodie, doesn't even care, right? And they're just like, buy what I've got, And we were like, man, this is an ultra premium opportunity, because this is the affordable luxury for our consumer, right? This is this is just like wine. This is just like beer. It's just like spirits. Mm-hmm. And we're missing the retail opportunity here. And so that was, I think, the two verticals that excited us the most. By nature of the first grow that we bought in this state, we ended up getting into extraction right off the bat, which was probably cardinal sin number 3, I would say, in our business, at least in the early years. But I think that, look, one of the reasons that that Colorado, I believe, is one of the more competitive environments in the country is because it's one of the most free markets that's out there. And you mentioned it yourself early on, right? Like we were one of the earliest. We had the most number of growers per capita, the most number of retailers per capita, not forever, but at least to start. And it was effectively a free license environment. And so anybody with a few $100,000 to their name could start up a grow or start up a retail store. And so you had infinite competition. And then what quickly happened is the consumer became the most educated consumer in the world, right? Because they had all these different products, all this innovation, all this new stuff. And so as a result, they demanded the highest quality at the lowest price, right? And that still continues to this day. When you were slinging pounds back in the early 2000s, you were probably at like $2,500 to $3,500 a pound, right?
Oh, dude. I mean, look, I won't forget when I walked in, and it was kind of, we were kind of getting near the end of our cycle, whatever. And I walk in and my buddy's like, look, dude, it's 300 an ounce and it's 250. And I'm like, what the fuck just happened? Like we were killing this, and it came fast and it came hard. And I think that a lot of people don't really, get the race to the bottom, but because I'm in automotive, that's like the automotive way of doing business has always been that way,
Automotive in China, right? Like automotive in China, you can buy the most sophisticated vehicle in the world for like $25,000, right? I mean,
it's why the United States does not allow them to bring their cars here.
100%. And I was just over there in September, and I was like, these guys are living in the future. It's crazy. And that is a pure race to the bottom, and truly races to the bottom are not always the worst thing in the world, right? Because there was a time when, when we were selling grams of live resin for $45. Today, I sell ultra premium, pure, fully homogeneous live resin, our best quality stuff, for $19.99, right? Wholesale. I sell, a blend for $14.99, right? And there are markets where people can't even begin to fathom that, right? A comparable gram on either one of those be like $60 anywhere else, right? And look, it's not all terrible. The challenge really is it's good for the consumer because the consumer is getting that variety, that quality, and only the cream of the crop really remain, right? People that, maybe it's not the most ultra premium product that your plug in a basement used to make for you. I totally appreciate that, right? But for commercial scale and commercial quality, it really is the best, right? Yeah. And I think that's great for the consumer because at the end of the day, they're getting a better quality product at a better price. I feel bad for operators in other markets, not necessarily Michigan, right? Not necessarily California or Washington, Oregon. They have the same, similar at least competitive markets. But, every market in the United States is going to go through this kind of pop and drop cycle. Colorado declined from 2.4 billion in sales to 1.3 billion in sales in 3 years. 3 years, right? Our market collapsed 47.4%. And that's because of a whole litany of issues. But net, only the strong are going to survive, right? You said yourself, you're a hippie capitalist, right? Yeah. If you're a capitalist, you believe that markets are efficient and that people are that the strong will survive, right? Mm-hmm. I think that's true. And if you deliver a better quality product at a lower cost, you're going to be successful. And that's the only thing that as a vertically integrated operator has sustained us over the last 8 odd years that we've been in the industry.
And I think that's the biggest point takeaway here is that the strong will survive a market. And I remember as a really young entrepreneur, before I even started my own gig, when I was still working for somebody else, I wrote an article about the dude who started Cliff Bar. Yeah. And he started Cliff Bar at like the worst possible time, like bubble crash, market's a shithole, early 2000s. Why would he do this? And he thought to himself, but if I do it and I succeed now, come high tide, I'm going to be a superstar, right? And wouldn't you know, right? I mean, you're talking about a brand that's gone through all of that, and you've seen it. And so that was what motivated me to say, hey, we're going to do this. Like, I've been in automotive my whole life. I've lived through 9/11. I've lived through economic downturn. I've lived through COVID. But our company, when we started it, I wanted to make it recession proof. So I priced the margins low. I got really aggressive on what was going out to the consumer, in this case, our car dealers, and what we could do for them at a fixed price, how we could value add it. And all it was given to us, because we weren't a tech stack, we were utilizing other people's tech, was human capital, right? Human time. So if I was willing to work for $100 an hour, then that's easy to charge $200 an hour. And now I'm half of what the normal consultant charges. Now I look good because I'm not trying to get rich on every deal, right? I'm in it for the long term. Right. And I think the view of long term is hard. So Matt, 8 years in cannabis is like, 5 years per. So you've been in like cannabis for 40 years, right? It's like dog years. Yeah. From your background of spirits, can you just give me just 2 things of honesty here? One, honestly, how fucking ridiculous is seed to sale given how you see alcohol taken, consumed, and distributed?
I mean, it's at least in Colorado, and this isn't true in all markets, but seed to sale in cannabis in this world is tough merely because there's a real dislocation between supply and demand, right? Like, in other words, what it costs for us to manufacture products is not really being fully appreciated on both the retail consumer side as well as the buy side, right? Now, part of that is also driven by the fact that we're still working through some of these suppliers that aren't going to be around forever, right? Like, that's just a reality. And so they're pushing out product based on the fact that they think their business is valued on revenue and not on profitability. They're, dumping product on the market for cheaper prices. And as a result, you've got to compete with that, right? Like, if you want to survive, there's this old adage of he who goes broke last doesn't go broke, right? And so you've got to survive. But what that forces me to do is figure out, like, how can I manufacture more efficiently? How do I save costs? So, like, for example, I'm one of the few, and I can't believe this, but like, I'm one of the few suppliers who's actually been to China to see where all of our cartridges come from, right? And to source our cartridges directly from the supplier, because one, it's cheaper, and two, you get better quality as a result of it, right? So then I can take that cost savings and give it to the consumer and stay competitive while maintaining my margins, right? So look, to answer your question simply, how messed up is seed to sale in a vertically integrated, cannabis environment? It's kind of messed up today, but I don't think it's going to be forever. I'm an internal optimist, and I know that this is just cyclical, right? And we're growing through the growing pains of this industry. Rec has only been around for going on, this is its 11th year, right? We celebrated our 10-year anniversary just, the last year. And so, we've got so much longer. Here's a great statistic. Post-prohibition, back in the 1920s, it took 11 years until all states were back to some form of adult use alcohol, right? Think about that. And that was an industry that was already at one point adult use globally, right? And then it went through prohibition, and then it took 11 years and then we're still living through blue laws that exist in any given state. I'm sure Wisconsin's got them, right? Like,
sure. No, I mean, look, dude, you can buy whatever alcohol you want.
That's fair. You are apparently the drunkest state in the
Sunday to Saturday don't make no difference to us. You can walk in the grocery store, you can walk in the liquor store, you can get the same amount of business. Don't matter to us. No, Colorado blue law was weird, right? Like the 3-2 on Sundays and shit was all weird to me. I didn't understand it. But this brings me to my point, right? Which is so many people, when you talk about cannabis, they don't want to hear, for whatever reason, they don't want to hear the comparison to prohibition. Now, I don't really get that. I don't know what it's rooted in. But what other examples in modern history does anyone have to compare and I'm not talking about the plant's medical viability versus the viability of alcohol. I am not. I am simply speaking of the business model of distribution is what I'm talking about. Matt, what's say? I mean, you already brought up prohibition, so I assume you get the parallels. But have you heard this before about not wanting to make said parallels?
No, and I would immediately argue against that, right? Like, look, let's call a spade. Cannabis has medicinal benefit 100%. I think that we haven't even scratched the surface of cannabinoids and novel cannabinoids. I think we're going to start isolating and extracting and building these products that will completely change the face of, both call it true medicinal benefits, but also engineered medicinal benefits, right? In other words, hey, Sean, you want to have lucid dreams every night? Here, take this isolated cannabinoid that we identified, that we've synthesized and given to you, all natural, but it's going to give you the most lucid dreams that you're going to be like Superman every night, right? Like that, I firmly believe on the one hand, we have tremendous medicinal benefits of cannabis that are yet to be discovered. And then on the flip side, let's also call a spade. This is a recreational product for a lot of people, right? To take the edge off, to have a good time, to enhance or unenhance your sociality. I'm making up words here, but so the answer to me is twofold. I think the comparisons to spirits, and of course I'm biased, right? Like I come from spirits, but I also come from medical devices before that. I think that the parallels to spirits is so real. Gummies are like beer, concentrates are like spirits, and flour is like wine, right? And I think that when you look at what is the future of each one of those verticals within this industry, you can look at those categories and draw really consistent parallels at the end of the day. And what's more is that, when you look at the question of prohibition, right? So 8 years until adult use alcohol was back out. And then let's call it, close to 90 years until most all blue laws were abolished, right? We are 10 years in on the rec exercise right now, right? And we still don't have rescheduling, right? We are very far away, in my opinion, to safe banking or any sort of congressional support or action. And then what's more, people ask me well, when's legalization coming? I'm like, pull up a chair and wait 20 years potentially, right? I think that for us to then say that this doesn't fall in line with a traditional model of prohibition, then maybe you don't understand the word of prohibition, possibly.
Yeah. And that's what I get back to. So you've hit on all the same points that I feel like are necessary to look at. And again, let's have a little bit of, time and foresight here. And I know it's not easy in a cash burn industry. And I've been in the background of cannabis as a private lender. So I've seen the cash churn. I know how this goes. It's not, 8 years ago was fun. 4 years ago was a little fun. The last 14 months have not been a blast, bro. But it's the course, right? It's what I knew I signed up for. I knew there would be times where I would be like, man, how come no one else is doing this? And I knew there'd be times where I get why no one else is doing this, right? So that's all par for the course.
Sean, I mean, just to build on that, because I talk to investors a lot, right? Like I've raised capital in this, I've raised debt in this business, and over the last 8 years, and I tell investors frequently, like, look, two things are true about investing in this category. First off, cannabis is like any other growth category, whether it's AI, advanced air mobility, crypto, or even like right now, the hottest thing to hit the market is going to be the peptides, right? And like any growth category, truly what I've learned from cannabis is you either want to be early or you want to be late, right? And truly, when we got into the industry, we were at the end of early, which means we were at the beginning of the middle, right? Yeah. And what does that mean? It means that at the end of the day, if you end up coming into this category, first you have to have a venture mindset, right? As an investor, you have to take a shotgun style approach. Too many people put all their eggs in one basket and failed as a result, right? And then the second thing about a venture strategy is, at the end of the day, you have to back the entrepreneur at the end of the day, right? And I think that what's true about us, at least, is that and what's true about all these cannabis businesses today, the only thing that everybody needs to focus on is the customer and the bottom line, right? Like that's it. And so if you're delivering a better customer experience, if you focus on nothing but being customer first, then at the end of the day, you're going to get more customers. They're going to spend more money with you. You're going to retain those customers, right? And then the second thing is, by focusing on your bottom line, if you're not profitable, you're not going to be here very much longer, right? And for us, we've focused exclusively on the bottom line, not the entire 8 years. I got to be honest, we really didn't start focusing on it until like last 3 years. And then that's when the clarity of our decision making really just came directly into focus. And we realized, like, shit, we got to get out of Illinois. We got to double down in Colorado. We got to focus on cutting expenses out of the business. We got to generate profitability because we've got debt to service. We have growth that we want to pay for. We need, CapEx and maintenance X that we need to pay for. And that only comes from the bottom line at the end of the day. Right. So to your point, the cycle is happening. And being an investor, you got to have that understanding, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I've looked at the bottom line of a P&L, and I've looked at the people. I've never invested on pitch deck. I've always been referred to other people because I do it really quietly and privately that way, right? So people, hey, my friends in this, okay, let's look at it. Let's look at the books. Let's see what we got. Because profitability. I mean, I run a human-only company. So just the people is the capital that we have. We all work from home. The first decision I made was to not have a business model that included an office, that included overhead, because I hated it. As a car dealer, it would suffocate me at night going home, thinking about $1 million in inventory, $2 million in building. And you're just like, oh my God. Right. So you get it. And so I decided I wasn't going to have any of that. I don't want any of that overhead. Right. And so you go and you build your model based on that, and you have revenue and bottom line is what matters. And one of the things that stood out to me in reading about you was a comment that was made. I can't remember where I read it, but it was basically bottom up budgeting.
Yeah.
And it struck me as something that, like, I hadn't heard before. Now, again, not college educated, so I don't know if that comes with MBAs. I'm not positive, but I don't know. Talk to me about budgeting up. Yeah, bottom up budgeting. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't have an MBA either. I went to the School of Hard Knocks, right? But I've been fortunate enough that I've essentially been running businesses since I was out of college, and I've made a lot of mistakes along the way. The fact is, there are many different ways in which people can budget and build a budget for their business, right? They can do zero-based budgeting, right? For example, AB InBev is famous for that, and 3G Capital implies that everywhere, which is essentially like start at zero and build from there, right? And only focus on what's absolutely needed. A bottom-up budgeting strategy is, instead of saying like, hey, this is our revenue number and we're going to push that all the way down the organization, or this is what leadership thinks that you're going to spend, accomplish this. We actually take sort of the opposite approach, where we build budgets line item by line item with our division leaders, right? With GMs of our stores, with our director of retail, with our director of extraction, director of cultivation, and we start to look at like, okay, what are your goals for output, right? What are your goals for revenue, or for a number of widgets you want to produce, right? How much flower do you want to sell? How much cartridges do you want to sell, and so forth. So we start to work with them on what is the baseline that you are planning on, and what do you think you can grow the business? How can you optimize based on our core values, right? Which we have 11 core values based on cost and waste of the enemy, or continuous improvement, right? Customer first. And the company objectives, what we want to achieve. How are you approaching that yourself? And so we start with, they build it from their bottom and it goes up, right? And as a result, it's a negotiation, I would say, in some ways, or not even negotiation is probably the wrong word. It's a collaboration between what our objectives are, what we want to accomplish as a business, how the leaders really interpret that for their own vertical, and then we build it together at the end of the day. And more often than not, man, we meet in the middle. And when we really started doing that in earnest and doing it better than we ever did before, man, the accuracy of our budgets is blowing my mind. I mean, a funny thing, back early in my career, one of my early mentors would say, Matt, you couldn't hit a number if your life depended on it, right? Like, because I would always just be this eternal optimist, like, we're going to grow 60% here and do all this there. And directionally, I was right? Like, the business grew and we cut costs, but man, I didn't hit a number to save my life. And today, using a bottom-up budgeting methodology, the level of accuracy on our forecasts is kind of staggering, and it's great, and it's led to a lot of our success in achieving the profitability expectations that we've got in the business.
What I also like about what you're saying here, and I didn't have a term for it. I do something very similar, and it sounds like you do something similar as well, which is I empower people who run their departments. I'm not here to run those departments. Otherwise, I wouldn't have them. And so I give them that empowerment, and sometimes I think it bites me in the ass a little bit because I think people become a little bit maybe too empowered, and maybe the way they talk to an employee, or I think there's some of that. But for the most part, empowerment of the division is how that division grows. And as someone who sits here in their mid-40s thinking, how much longer I'm in the auto industry 26 years. How much longer do I want to be in this industry? What else do I want to be doing with my life? I always come back to the enjoyment of the job. And as long as, we're around people that enjoy the job, it's cool. But the one thing I can't train people is to give a shit about the business. Yeah. And when you find it, you have to keep it. You have to find a way to keep that person, because it's the one untrainable fact for that, Matt. So I think
Sean, I was going to say culture. So what that would say to me about your business is, one, you've got culture, right? And then you have to retain the people that you have to retain. Right. And that's critical. And I think that, the bigger and better the culture becomes, the better your team becomes, the more people you've got to retain, but it becomes a self-serving practice. You know what I mean?
I mean, look, dude, it took me almost 9 years to even have another person next to me, my wife, and my business partner. Totally. So I'm a pretty grip close type guy, but I do realize that in order to grow, in order for me to be able to take a step back or do more of, like we talked about in the lead-in, about life and in general, in order to do that, you have to find people to be able to complement and fill that void. So,
we actually, my wife and I, we teach a case study at Stanford, which, humble brag right there. But the whole thing is on the hiring scorecard, right? So it's how to hire for outcomes with frontline team members. So, especially at business school, people are all focused on hiring the CFO, hiring the VP of this, hiring the lead programmer or whatever. But then a lot of people who are entrepreneurs forget that your front line is your most important line, because they're the ones making a daily interaction with the customer, right? And more often than not, we all have a tendency to hire with our biases as opposed to hiring for outcomes, right? What is the outcome of that bud tender? We want them to sell $40,000 a month. How are we going to ask a question that's going to get us to that result, right? And then if you only have a 30-minute interview, what are the 4 questions that you're asking? What are the 4 outcomes that you're really trying to achieve, right? How do you make sure they're going to show up on time? How do you confirm that they're going to have great customer experience and service, And so I think that to your point, hiring great teams is at the end of the day, the most important thing. That was the most transformative in our business, was going from B and C players to going to A players. And when we got A players, it was kind of like this aha, holy shit moment where I was just like, oh my God, they're so much smarter than me. And they're so much better than me at these things. And to your point, you've got to like trust but verify, right? Like you got to have your dashboards and your data that you're looking at to understand, like, is this person going off? You got to reset them and get everybody moving in the same direction. And I think that's normal management for anybody at a senior level. But at the end of the day, hiring great people, man, it should free you up to focus on strategy, culture, and team. Right. And if you're just focused on those three things, you're crushing it.
Couldn't have said it better, man. Couldn't have said it better. Matt, this has been awesome, man. Thank you so much. We're going to get into the final segment of the show today. That is the Hot Hits segment brought to us by Hephaestus, House of Automation. Look, are you someone that cares about consistency? Do you want the Dutch crown finish with infused material? Do you want to be able to produce 2,000 of those an hour? If that's you, head over to HEFESTUS-tech.com to learn more. Hephaestus, House of Automation, thank you for your trust and sponsorship. The season wouldn't happen without you. All right, hot hits, Matt. Here we go. Word association fun. Some of these are more like sentences, but either way. All right, here we go, Matt. Reschedule.
Crucially important, but not what everybody thinks.
Okay, very good, very good. What is the hottest SKU right now for vertical integration at Matt's business? What's the hottest thing running?
Our hottest thing right now, can't keep this thing in stock. This is our 2G plus fully homogeneous live resin. This thing's just a banger. But my most important SKU in the business definitely is our gold tip. So our fully homogeneous, pure live resin, single strain specific. It's our number one SKU outside of flower. So that's what's hot.
Love it, love it, love it. All right, we've already a little bit addressed this, but hardest part about being in an OG state?
Hardest part of being in an OG state is wondering, man, like, are you I think is knowing that it's evolution, it's maturity, it's evolving, it's growing up from being an infant to a toddler, to a kid, to a young adult and an adult. Where are we on the life cycle, and when will that accelerate? Right. Yeah.
Love it. Love it. All right. Two more. Second to last one here. What is next for Pioneer Interests?
Love that, man. We had, multi-state ambitions. We pursued them. We were successful in opening up in a new market. And then we realized we weren't match fit. And so we decided to pull out and then to focus our efforts just doubling down in Colorado. And where we think this pop and drop is going to occur in pretty much every other market in the United States, the hurricanes kind of passed in Colorado for all intents and purposes. So our business is up double digits for revenue and margin. The industry is still down 6% last year, but our focus and future is doubling down in Colorado, being the most profitable operator in the state, and just continuing to deliver phenomenal customer experience for the customer.
I think it takes a lot for people to be able to do what you've done and say, I entered a state, I did fine. I could have maybe continued to do fine, but maybe at the risk of other things. And so where I do my thing, what I do is this is my core business, right? And I love that. I think that's a great call. Last question.
You got to know what to say no to at the end of the day.
And look, I that's why I joke. That's why I have my wife, because I'm like, what was that? That sounds like a great idea. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do this. And she's like, whoa. If you say yes to everyone, there's no way everyone had a great idea. Totally. So she's my voice of reason. Last question.
Mine too.
Favorite way to consume, Matt?
Favorite way to consume definitely is still our live resin cartridges, especially Golden Goat. I think we have the purest, best cut of goat in the state, and I think our consumers would back us up on that, as would buyers. But also just a pre-roll, right? Like our pre-rolls are fresh. We go from on the vine to shipped in 30 days. And they're fresh, they're potent, and they've got that Dutch fold and a raw cone, and they're just great to consume. So those are probably my two favorite ways.
Next time in Colorado, I'm going to have to definitely make a stop at the dispos you guys own, man, because I love
it. We'd love to take care of you.
I love me a good pre-roll, that's for sure. Matt, man, thanks a lot. This has been a lot of fun. I love telling the story of founders, and you have a great one, and you are doing something that I think most people don't have the guts for. If they do, they have too much arrogance to truly succeed, and you seem to cut the middle there, man. So great job, and keep it up. You and your wife are doing something special.
Sean, really appreciate the time, man. And thank you to your listeners. And hopefully it was worthwhile. And yeah, anytime anybody's in Colorado, check out Lova and buy some Natty Rems products where you can find them.
Let's do it. We're going to do it. Thanks again, man. Really appreciate it. And thank you all for listening, watching, however you consume this beautiful podcast. We appreciate you for doing it. And while we're on the appreciation, yep, you guessed it, we appreciate Hephaestus House of Automation for all that they do. If you'd like to learn more, head over to hefestus-tech.com. We will see you next week on the show. And remember, it is our goal here to remove the stigma and uplift the plant to its rightful place in society. We hope you share in that journey with us. We'll see you next time.